I mean, if you really think about it, having like less than $2 to your name, basic rational economics says your absolute first priority should be hoarding every single cent.
Oh, absolutely. You just lock it down entirely.
Right. You hide it, you build this massive wall around whatever meager resources you have because tomorrow is just entirely uncertain.
It's pure self-preservation at that point.
Exactly. So why is it that some of the most economically deprived communities on Earth, I mean, people living in just grinding, relentless hardship, why will they freely share their absolute last pot of food with their neighbors?
Because it completely defies our standard Western understanding of self-preservation, right? I mean, it looks like economic suicide on paper.
It really does. It looks like a math error. But today, we are going to look at why that isn't a math error at all. We are basically tearing down our entire definition of wealth.
Which is a heavy lift, but so necessary.
Yeah, and whether you are currently facing a massive, life-altering hurdle yourself, maybe a health crisis or a career collapse, or honestly, if you're just feeling the heavy, relentless weight of the daily grind, this deep dive is entirely tailored for you.
We're going straight to the source today.
Now you are. We are going to look at what we're calling the silent teachers.
Meaning people living in extreme baseline poverty?
Right. Not billionaires. Not, Silicon Valley tech bros with their perfectly optimized morning routines and cold plunges.
Right. No 5 a.m. ice baths here.
No, none of that. We are looking at individuals who are surviving conditions most of us literally cannot fathom to uncover these lessons about resilience, resourcefulness, and hope that, honestly, money simply cannot buy. We are flipping the script.
I think, and I mean this sincerely, we need to set the stage very carefully right out of the gate here.
Yeah, the ethical side of this.
Exactly. Because this raises an immediate glaring ethical question. We are absolutely not here to put some glossy cinematic filter over suffering.
No, not at all.
There is nothing beautiful about starvation. There is nothing romantic about lacking basic medicine. So we are not minimizing the pain of hardship. Instead, the mission of this deep dive is to look at the absolute most difficult human conditions and ask an operational question like, how is light actually being generated here?
How are the seeds of transformation hidden inside of that extreme pain?
Right, precisely. We're looking for the mechanics of survival.
Right, but we have to understand the soil before we can understand the seed. And to do that, I think we have to grasp the sheer crushing scale of the macro reality we are actually talking about.
Well, the baseline statistics are just staggering. I mean, over 400 million Africans live below the poverty line.
100 million.
Yeah. We are talking about hundreds of millions of individuals who wake up every single morning genuinely not knowing the source of their next meal. Children dying from entirely preventable diseases simply because a rural clinic lacks like $5 worth of basic antibiotic.
But see, a number like 400 million, it actually protects us in a weird way.
How so?
It triggers this psychological defense mechanism. It's called psychic numbing.
Oh, right, where the brain just kind of shuts off.
Exactly.
Yeah.
When I hear 400 million, it feels like looking at a monolithic, unscalable wall of gray concrete. The numbers are so astronomically large that the human brain just short circuits. It goes completely numb.
It stops being a visceral human crisis.
Yeah, it just becomes this abstract theory. It's a terrible math problem on a chalkboard that we can comfortably just walk away from.
And that numbness is precisely the barrier we have to break through if we want to learn anything of value today, because poverty is not a theory.
No.
It is a highly specific sensory reality. If we really want to understand the mechanics of how these silent teachers survive, we have to strip away the protection of those large numbers.
We have to zoom in on a single brick in that wall.
We have to look at the literal physical reality on the ground. It is the highly specific sound of a mother crying because she has literally no food to give her children.
Yep.
It is the intense, crushing psychological weight pressing down on a father who has walked 10 miles looking for work and found absolutely nothing. It is the deafening silence of a child sitting in a sweltering classroom without books, without shoes, just staring at a blackboard.
Just trying to comprehend it.
Right. We cannot learn from a data point. We can only learn from a human face.
Which brings us to the actual micro experience of this. Let's look at one specific face to see how survival operates day to day. There's this story in our sources of a woman in a rural village.
Oh, the orange seller.
Yes. She sells oranges by the side of a dusty, unpaved road. Her total daily earnings amount to less than $2 a day.
Wow.
Less than $2. And yet, every single morning she wakes up and she sings while she prepares her fruit for the day.
She sings. On less than $2 a day.
Right. But I'm going to stop us right here.
Yeah.
Because I have a major, major problem with this on its face.
Okay, let's hear it.
When I first look at a story like this, all my alarms go off. This feels like a trap.
The toxic positivity trap.
Yes. Aren't we just romanticizing systemic failure here? I mean, by focusing on a woman seeing while living in extreme systemic deprivation, aren't we basically saying, oh, look how happy the poor are. They don't need our help. Look at her spirit.
Right, right.
That sounds a lot like toxic positivity used to just completely justify inequality.
I am so glad you brought that up, honestly, because that is the exact pitfall we have to avoid in this deep dive. If we view her singing as just her being happy, we are missing the profound psychological reality of what is actually happening there.
Okay, so what is happening?
Well, the source explicitly states poverty is a set of chains. It crushes people physically and mentally. There is no illusion here that her life is fair or that systemic inequality should be ignored.
So the singing isn't just whistling while you work.
No, not at all. What this specific story highlights is not toxic positivity. It is a highly advanced psychological mechanism. It's agency.
Agency. Okay, break that down for me. How is singing an act of agency?
When asked why she sings, her answer is an absolute masterclass in survival mechanics. She says, because singing costs nothing, but it gives me strength.
Oh, wow. Costs nothing, gives strength.
Think about the environment she is operating in. She is in a landscape that is completely starved of physical and financial resources. She has no capital. She has no safety net.
Nothing to fall back on.
Exactly. So what does she do? She consciously utilizes joy and song as free, renewable resources to literally manufacture the internal strength she needs to face a brutal external reality.
That is, that's just wild. Costs nothing, but it gives me strength.
Exactly. She isn't singing because she's ignoring the hardship. She is singing to generate the fuel required to survive the hardship.
It's not an escape.
No, it is a brilliant, calculated survival mechanism. She is creating psychological capital out of thin air because the financial capital is literally at zero.
So it's a tool to confront reality, not hide from it.
Yeah, precisely. It is the literal manifestation of creating life from almost nothing. She isn't passively accepting her fate. She is actively managing her internal state to optimize her chances of endurance.
That completely flips my understanding of it. I was so ready to be cynical about that story.
It's easy to be cynical until you see the utility of it.
Yeah. And if psychological strength can be deliberately generated from a free song, it forces us to ask what else we fundamentally misunderstand about the concept of value, right?
Absolutely.
If we look at how wealth functions in these environments, it completely dismantles the Western definition of what it actually means to be rich.
It requires a total paradigm shift.
Because in modern society, and especially in the West, we view wealth almost exclusively as a fortress.
A fortress, yeah. That's a great way to put it.
Think about it. The entire goal of acquiring money is to build thicker walls. You buy a house in a gated community, you buy better private insurance, you hoard resources in an offshore account.
You're trying to insulate yourself.
Exactly. The goal is to keep the unpredictable, messy, dangerous world out. It's all about insulation. But what poverty teaches us is that true wealth operates much more like an open door.
That fortress versus open door metaphor is exactly right. When you examine the mechanics of survival and extreme hardship, 4 distinct lessons about true wealth emerge from our sources. The first 2 are resourcefulness and community.
Let's unpack resourcefulness first, because I think a lot of people confuse it with just, being frugal, like cutting coupons, that sort of thing.
Right, saving a few bucks at the grocery store.
Yeah, but that's not what we're talking about here, is it?
Not at all. Frugality is a choice. Resourcefulness in this context is the profound innovation born out of absolute, unyielding necessity.
Because you don't have the fortress.
Exactly. Think about the fortress mentality. When you have an abundance of money, your first instinct when a problem arises is simply to buy a solution.
Oh, totally. If a piece of machinery breaks, you just order a replacement on Amazon?
If you're hungry, you open an app and someone magically delivers a meal to your door in 30 minutes. The money entirely bypasses the need for creativity.
Right. Money is basically an outsourcing tool for problem solving.
That is exactly what it is. But when you have no money, you cannot outsource the problem. You have to innovate with whatever is immediately in front of you.
You have to actually face it.
And this is a high-level cognitive skill. It's the genius of knowing how to take a handful of vegetable scraps that someone else would just throw in the garbage and slowly simmer them into a genuinely nourishing broth.
Making something out of literal trash.
Right. It's the ability to meticulously diagnose and repair a complex mechanical issue in a water pump using, like, salvaged wire and duct tape.
Right.
It is the ability to look at finite resources and stretch them to staggering limits. They're seeing potential and utility where a wealthy person only sees garbage.
It's the ultimate form of creative problem solving. And that leads directly into the second lesson, which is community.
The open door.
Yes, and this is where that open door analogy really comes to life, but also honestly where I get stuck on the math again.
How so? Where's the disconnect?
We talked about this at the very beginning of the deep dive. The beautiful, almost miraculous reality of shared hardship. In these incredibly deprived neighborhoods, one small pot of soup can somehow feed 5 different families.
It happens all the time.
But standard economics would say that sharing your only resource in a scarcity environment is suicidal. I mean, if I have one pot of soup, and I don't know if I'll get another one for 3 days, freezing half of it for myself is the only logical move.
It seems like the only way to survive.
Right, so why doesn't this community just collapse faster by giving away their calories?
Because standard economics assumes a relatively stable state. It assumes you have a freezer, a lock on your door, and a police force to protect your property.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. In a profound crisis state, in extreme poverty, those assumptions completely evaporate. In an environment without a formal safety net, no unemployment checks, no social security hoarding is actually what gets you killed.
Wait, hoarding is the danger.
Yes. Because eventually, no matter how much you hoard, you will run out. Your single pot of soup will be gone. And if you have hoarded it, you have isolated yourself, you've built a fortress, but you are starving inside of it alone.
So sharing is basically the insurance premium.
Exactly. Wealth is not what you keep, but what you share. That's the core message here. In a community facing immense struggle, sharing is the ultimate decentralized safety net.
So you give a portion of your soup away today.
Knowing full well that next week, when your pot is empty and your neighbor has a handful of rice, they will feed you. Your wealth is not measured by the calories in your pantry. It is measured by the strength of your relationships and your social capital. The network is the wealth.
That is incredible that a network is the wealth. I love that.
It's a completely different way to evaluate risk and security.
But it begs the question, what happens when the network fails? I mean, we've talked about stretching scraps and sharing soup, but what happens when the soup is completely gone? When the neighbor has nothing? When the scrap pile is totally empty?
When the physical reality hits absolute zero.
Exactly. How does the human spirit sustain itself in an absolute vacuum? Because that's where the final 2 lessons of wealth come in, right? Resilience and faith.
This is where we move from sociology and economics into deep psychology and neurology. Let's look at resilience. And we really have to be careful with that word because it gets thrown around a lot in, like, corporate seminars.
Oh yeah, the buzzword version of resilience.
Right. We often think of resilience as elasticity.
Like a rubber band.
Oh!
You experience a trauma, you bend, you weather the storm, and eventually you snap back to the exact shape you were before the bad thing happened.
Right, bouncing back. But when you are exposed to relentless, crushing hardship, bouncing back to who you were isn't enough, because who you were wasn't equipped to handle the trauma in the first place.
Whoa, that makes so much sense.
The reality we observe in these communities aligns with a profound clinical concept called post-traumatic growth, or PTG.
Unpack PTG for me. How's it different from just, bouncing back?
Post-traumatic growth means the trauma, the extreme adversity, doesn't just bend you, it acts as a forge.
A forge. Like blacksmithing.
Exactly. The intense heat and pressure of the experience completely shatter your previous worldview. But in the rebuilding process, you don't return to the baseline. You develop into something entirely new and structurally much stronger.
So it changes your actual composition.
Yes. You develop deeper wisdom, a massive increase in empathy, and a much higher tolerance for ambiguity and pain precisely because of the adversity.
It's not bouncing back, it's bouncing forward.
Bouncing forward, exactly. The hardship builds a completely new architecture in the mind. And the poor live this clinical reality every single day. They learn the intricate mechanics of rising after every single fall, of manufacturing hope after an endless string of disappointments.
And deeply intertwined with that post-traumatic growth is the concept of faith.
A very specific kind of faith, yes.
Right, and I want to be really specific about what kind of faith we're talking about here. Because when you strip away every physical comfort, when there is literally nothing else to hold on to, people hold on to God. But the faith operating in a slum or a famine isn't the polite, Sunday best, performative faith you might see in a comfortable, affluent suburb.
No, not at all. It is entirely stripped of pretense.
It's raw, it's desperate, it's screaming at the sky. In extreme poverty, prayers aren't about finding a good parking spot at the grocery store.
No, they are raw, visceral pleas for basic survival.
But the crucial distinction here is how faith functions mechanically in these situations. Faith in this context isn't a magic spell that just removes the struggle.
That distinction is vital. It's not an anesthetic. It doesn't numb the pain.
Right. Our sources define it as the presence of courage in the middle of struggle. It's an anchor holding a ship in a raging storm. It's not a weather machine that magically turns off the rain.
I like that analogy.
It provides the meaning required to endure the suffering, rather than a guarantee that the suffering will just end tomorrow.
You know, Viktor Frankl, the psychiatrist who survived the Holocaust, wrote extensively about this exact phenomenon.
Oh, in Man's Search for Meaning.
Yes, he observed that the prisoners who survived the longest were not necessarily the physically strongest, but the ones who could attach a deep, unshakable meaning to their suffering. Faith provides that structural meaning. It gives the suffering a context.
Okay, so I understand post-traumatic growth in theory. I understand the mechanics of meaning and faith. I get it. But I need to see the actual physics of this in the real world.
You want the receipts.
I do. Does this philosophy actually translate into hard, tangible material evidence? Can trauma and shared soup actually build a business or completely change a physical landscape?
It absolutely can, and we have the empirical proof from the sources to back it up. Let's look at 3 phenomenal case studies where these exact concepts, resourcefulness, community, resilience, and faith, manifested into massive real-world outcomes.
Okay, tell me about the Kenyan widows. This one was fascinating.
This is a perfect example of post-traumatic growth and community working together. So you have a group of widows in Kenya, deeply marginalized, actively grieving the loss of their spouses, and facing complete financial ruin.
The absolute bottom.
Right. Standard economics would predict their total collapse. They have no capital, no support, but they pooled their shared grief, their trauma, and their minimal physical materials to form a bead-making collective.
Just using whatever they had.
Exactly. And they didn't just sit in a circle and make jewelry to pass the time. They built a highly organized supply chain. They taught each other complex techniques.
They became a corporation, basically.
They did. They used their collective voice to negotiate better prices for raw materials than any of them could have ever gotten individually. Today, they run a massive enterprise, exporting their jewelry across the entire globe.
That is just incredible. They weaponized their shared trauma to build an international export business.
They bounced forward.
They really did. And then there is the story of the young Nigerian man. Now, this one blew my mind because of the sheer trajectory of it. He started out literally selling water in plastic bottles on the street, dodging traffic, navigating that grueling, highly dangerous daily hustle just to eat.
A brutal reality.
And now, he runs a wildly successful tech startup.
Which sounds like a fairy tale, right? Until you actually look at the mechanics of what selling water on a dangerous highway teaches you.
Right. I was thinking about this. How does street hustle translate to the skills of a tech CEO? They seem like totally different worlds.
Well, think about what that young man had to do every single day just to survive. He had to perform hyper-agile risk assessment, judging which cars to approach and which to avoid in a split second.
While running through traffic.
Exactly. He had to manage his own micro-supply chain. He had to understand customer psychology, literally reading human behavior through a windshield in 3 seconds flat to close a transaction before the light turned green.
Oh my gosh, you're right.
And on top of all that, he had to deal with relentless rejection and physical exhaustion, yet still wake up the next day and do it all over again.
That is the exact foundational skill set of a startup founder.
Exactly. When he finally got access to a computer and learned to code, he wasn't starting from scratch. He had a literal PhD in grit, risk management, and resilience. He took the brutal education of the streets and applied it directly to the tech sector. That is post-traumatic growth in action.
It's the ultimate pivot. And finally, the case study of the South African townships during times of severe crisis.
This is a beautiful one.
Yeah, when the formal supply chains broke down, when government assistance completely failed them, the communities didn't just riot or starve. They came together and created shared cooperative gardens in the middle of these densely populated, impoverished areas.
The ultimate physical expression of shared wealth.
Yeah.
They took whatever seeds they could scrounge, combined their labor, and turned dirt into a food source that successfully fed hundreds of people. One seed shared among many, generating exponential returns. It proves that hope actively grows in hardship. It's not just a coping mechanism, it's a tangible building material.
Which pivots us directly to you, the listener. Because hearing about a tech founder in Nigeria or widows in Kenya is inspiring, sure. But how does this map to your reality?
How do you bring it home?
Exactly. Whatever your personal hardship might be right now, maybe you're navigating a devastating divorce or the overwhelming, suffocating anxiety of modern life, or maybe a career that just collapsed out from under you. How do you apply this African playbook of resilience to your own life?
We can distill this down into 5 highly practical, actionable steps. A framework for cognitive reprogramming and behavioral change pulled straight from the source material.
All right, step 1, practice gratitude. Now, the advice here is to list 3 things you are thankful for each day, even in the middle of intense difficulty. But I want you to elevate this for us because, honestly, practice gratitude sounds like something you'd read on a cheesy, inspirational poster in a dentist's waiting room. This is just fluffy self-help.
It is the furthest thing from fluffy self-help. We are talking about hardcore neurobiology here.
Okay, let's hear the science.
From a neurological standpoint, when you are in a state of hardship, your brain perceives a massive threat. It activates the HPA axis, the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, and floods your entire system with cortisol.
That's stress hormone.
Exactly. And what cortisol does is create intense tunnel vision. It hijacks your amygdala so you are hyper-focused only on the immediate threat. You literally, biologically, cannot see the bigger picture or spot new opportunities because your brain is just trying to keep you alive for the next 5 seconds.
So you're trapped in a threat response loop. You can't think creatively.
Yes. By forcing yourself, consciously, to identify 3 positive things, no matter how ridiculously small they are, like a good cup of coffee or a nice breeze, you are actively interrupting that threat response loop.
You're breaking the circuit.
You are forcing your prefrontal cortex to engage. You are literally demanding that neuroplasticity occur. By repeating this practice, you build new neural pathways that scan the environment for opportunity and safety, rather than just threat. Gratitude is a cognitive crowbar that pries your brain out of survival mode.
I love that. A cognitive crowbar.
Yeah.
It's a mental workout. It's not about feeling warm and fuzzy. It's about regaining control of your own hardware.
Exactly.
Okay, step 2. Start small, start now. The advice is not to wait for perfect conditions, but to use what you have exactly where you are. I think a lot of us suffer from when-then syndrome.
Oh, constantly.
Like, when I get the funding, then I'll start the business. When I feel better, then I'll reach out to my friends.
And waiting for perfection is just a socially acceptable form of procrastination driven entirely by fear.
Right. It's like the concept of the minimum viable product, the MVP, in the tech world. You don't wait 5 years to build the perfect, flawless app in a vacuum. You launch with a break-in, buggy prototype today, and you learn from the friction.
You get real-world data.
Exactly. You don't wait for a perfectly temperature-controlled greenhouse to plant a seed. You jam it in the rocky soil right now and see what happens. The orange seller didn't wait to own a commercial supermarket. She started with a woven basket of fruit and a song.
Small beginnings generate momentum, and momentum is the absolute antidote to the paralysis of hardship.
Step 3. Lean on community. Do not suffer alone. Share your struggles. We touched on this with the shared soup, but let's talk about the psychological mechanics of it for the listener.
Humans are deeply social primates. When we experience trauma or hardship in isolation, the cognitive load is entirely on our own nervous system. It magnifies the perception of the threat.
Because you're carrying it all yourself.
Exactly. But when you vocalize your struggle to a trusted friend, a neighbor, or a faith group, you are literally diffusing the cognitive load across multiple nervous systems.
Wow.
Co-regulation occurs.
Co-regulation, meaning your bodies actually sync up.
Yes, your breathing slows down, your heart rate drops. Hardship cognitively becomes lighter when it is a shared burden. Isolation turns a manageable fire into an inferno, so you have to speak up.
That makes total sense.
Okay.
Step 4. Invest in learning. This one feels deeply empowering to me. Hardship, by definition, often restricts your financial capital. You are broke, but it cannot limit your intellectual capital unless you let it.
This is about pivoting your currency.
Pivoting your currency. Explain that.
When you are financially tapped out, you have to switch to a currency that is free and infinite, which is knowledge. Utilize public libraries, devour free online courses, seek out mentors who are willing to talk to you. Why? Because knowledge creates optionality.
It gives you choices.
It is the ultimate tool for resourcefulness. You might be staring at a broken water pump with no money to hire a plumber. But if you spend 3 hours learning the mechanics of fluid dynamics and basic plumbing online, you have acquired the intellectual capital to build the solution yourself.
You've become your own resource. And finally, step 5. Anchor in faith. Pray, meditate, and consciously remember that hardship does not mean abandonment.
This goes right back to finding meaning. The source says God is closest to the brokenhearted. This principle reminds us that hope is not the cowardly act of ignoring pain.
It's not burying your head in the sand.
No, it is the incredibly brave, conscious, difficult choice to rise despite the pain. It is anchoring yourself to a truth much larger than your current circumstances.
So think about the magnitude of what we've just discussed today. If we take these 5 personal steps, rewiring our brains with gratitude, launching our MVPs right now, diffusing our trauma through community, hoarding intellectual capital, and anchoring in meaning, and we apply them not just to our own individual lives, but to society at large,
It changes everything.
it demands a total, radical paradigm shift in how we view leadership, power, and structure.
It demands that we completely invert the social hierarchy.
Exactly. Imagine a society where the lessons of the poorest among us actually shape our overarching corporate and political values. A world where we see wealth not as luxury, not as a fortress of insulation, but as a mechanism for service,
That would be revolutionary.
where the post-traumatic growth and resilience of the oppressed become the actual sought-after foundation of our leadership models.
It is a profound societal flip. For centuries, society has looked at the poor, at those in extreme hardship, as a problem to be solved, or at best as an object of pity for charities. We spend all our time trying to figure out how to make them act more like the wealthy.
How to assimilate them into the fortress.
Right. But everything we've uncovered today argues the exact opposite. They are actually the leaders we desperately need. They hold the operational blueprint for survival in an increasingly unstable world.
Because a society built on the innate dignity, the deep soup-sharing community, and the raw, unpretentious faith of the poor would be structurally unbreakable
It would be inherently strong, it would be naturally compassionate.
and profoundly just. Because it would operate on the fundamental understanding that true wealth is not, and never has been, strictly about the accumulation of money. It's about the durability of your character, the strength of your community network, and your internal capacity for resilience.
It completely upends our traditional metrics of success.
It does. And I want to leave you, the listener, with a final provocative thought to really mull over as you go about the rest of your week. We spend so much of our energy trying to meticulously curate our lives.
Oh, the constant curation.
We construct these perfect social media profiles, we craft these flawless resumes, and we try desperately to hide our failures, our struggles, our bankruptcies, those dark moments where we feel totally, utterly beaten down by life. We view our hardship as a disqualifier.
A stain on the record. Something to be ashamed of.
Exactly. But based on everything we've learned today from the silent teachers, what if you have the equation entirely backwards? What if the very struggles you are currently trying to hide from the world, the things you are most ashamed of, are actually the exact credentials you need to lead and help others in the future?
What if your deepest hardship is, in fact, your ultimate qualification?
Think about the Nigerian tech founder. He didn't succeed in spite of selling water on a dangerous street. He succeeded because of the skills that street demanded of him. What if the fire you are walking through right now, the pain that feels so pointless, is actually a forge?
It's building the architecture.
What if it is actively manufacturing the exact tool, the exact empathy, the exact resilience your community is going to desperately need from you tomorrow?
It reframes the pain from a punishment into a preparation.
It absolutely does. If you are struggling right now, if you feel forgotten, isolated, or beaten down by the weight of your circumstances, hear this loud and clear. Your hardship is not the end of your story. It is the training ground. Inside your pain lies unimaginable strength. Inside your struggle lies a fierce, uncharted creativity.
Inside your poverty lies a wealth the world cannot measure.
Rise with hope today. Sing like the orange seller to generate your own strength. Build your future from scraps like the Kenyan widows. Dream with the audacity of the young man with the water bottles. Please share this deep dive with someone in your life who needs a reminder today that there is brilliant, undeniable light even in the absolute darkest of times. Because at the end of the day, when you're looking at the chaotic reality of a hard life, the true measure of your wealth isn't the clean black and white numbers on a bank statement. It's the open doors you keep, the soup you share, and the unbreakable strength you find when you thought you had absolutely nothing left.